Hey guys, so it is the last day of April, which means it is time to do my April reading wrap up. I am filming this later in the day than I'd originally anticipated, but as you'll see from the thumbnail, or if you follow me on Goodreads, you would know that I had a very weird April. So I'd gone into it with all of these goals that I was sure I'd be able to set for myself, and then somehow it kind of did the opposite of everything I had planned. So I worked more than I was anticipating. There were some life changes involved that may or may not get into that another time. And I ended up catching strep throat. So that's how I spent the last week. I'm still on antibiotics for that, but I went days without knowing what it was, and I couldn't talk, I could barely breathe, and I didn't want to get out of bed. So unfortunately, reading did take a backseat this month, but I did relaunch my personal blog, and I'm going to get back into my book blog. So all of those are always linked down in the description. But yeah, ever since AYearAThon, I just kind of downhilled with reading. And I miss it. It's not for lack of trying, but yeah. So I only read 3 books this month. They were meh. And I was like 3, 4, and 5, so can't complain, but let's get right into it. First book that I read this month, I didn't even remember that I read this month, and that is In a Glass Grimly by Adam Gidwit. So this is the second book in his Tale Dark and Grim series. They aren't companion novels to each other. So this one followed Jack and Jill, and they are cousins. So they go on separate adventures, and then they go on adventures together. And it's very retelling and dark. So it's just broken up into a bunch of different stories, and it's written in like huge font, and there's pictures. So it's a very quick read. But I enjoyed the first one more than I enjoyed this one. I found this one to be both darker and more gruesome, but also more juvenilely written, which was unfortunate. It is middle grade, so I appreciate that, but I just felt like because Jack and Jill were older, that maybe the language would have been a little bit older, but it was kind of young and very repetitive, and I just didn't like that about it. So I give it 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. But in comparison to the first one, not my favorite. Then I read Pretty Girl 13 by Liz Coley. This is one that I've been holding on to for so long. Every time I do a book on haul, I'm sure this is going to make it onto the list, but I can't bear to part with it. And for the most part, I'm glad I read it. I just don't know if it's one that I'll read again. So this is a young adult mystery about a girl named, I remember her name, Angie, and she shows up on her doorstep one day and can't remember what's going on. The last thing she remembers is that she's been at summer camp. So she's 14 years old, about to turn 14. She's coming home from camp away with her, I think it was like Girl Scouts or something similar, and she's about to start high school. When her mom opens the door, it's actually been 2 years that Angie has been missing, and they've been looking for her. And she is now 16, but has no recollection of how she has spent the last 2 years. So she was kidnapped and held hostage for 2 years. And I'm not sure what else to say without spoiling anything, because there were aspects in this novel that I wasn't expecting. So yes, I went into this not reading the synopsis, but if you do, you can gather where the story is going to go. I recommend not, because it was more interesting that way, and if I'd known, I think I would have found it a little bit more cliche. So it was done well from all of the mental illness sides, I will give it that. But I found the characters to be lacking and disconnected, and the writing was okay. I don't know if I'd jump to read anything else by her, but overall I thought it was okay. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I rounded it up to a 4. And then the last book that I read this month is one that took me about 2.5 weeks to read, not because I didn't like it, far from the opposite, but because my life got very different about 2 weeks ago, and I have no complaints, none at all. Reading just slid away from me, and I couldn't believe how much time had passed and how long it took me to read this book, because I just finished it today. So that is my reread of Ignite Me by Tahara Mafi. I wanted to reread the Shatter Me series before starting Restore Me, which for the second month in a row I didn't get to. So first book I read next month. But I love this world and I love this series, and I remembered most of what happened in this book, so I think that's why I wasn't held like so on the edge of my seat like I was with the first two, because this one was the one that was most fresh in my mind. But I love the characters. I love seeing how far they've come in the series and how independent each of them has gotten, because in the first book they are all pretty dependent on someone or something or each other, and as the series progresses each one is able to like stand on their own 2 feet, and I find that really refreshing. But still love the love triangle in here. I feel like it's been long enough. I love Warner, so I think he has come a long way, and I think that he and Juliet are very good for each other. I think although they sometimes bring out the worst in each other, I think they also bring out the best, and I think that Tahereh Mafi depicts that relationship so well. She has such a good way with words that it's amazing. So yes, 5 out of 5 stars. So yeah, those are the 3 books that I read this month, when I think my goal was to read like 15. So nailed that, obviously. But sometimes life happens, things happen, time gets away from us, it is what it is. So May, I am anticipating to be crazy because I start school on the 7th, still have my life change from April, and then I go to New York on the 29th, which is super exciting. So still hoping to get reading done. Because I'm taking 2 English classes, I think that's going to help. But I have a few books that I want to read. So make sure you subscribe, because I will be posting my May TBR tomorrow. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know what books you read in April and which one was your favorite. And yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow for my TBR. Bye.